If you've gotten bit recently by having a surprising amount of taxable interest impact your tax return, I've got a few ways that you can shelter that income and offset the taxability of it. I've got those ideas and more coming up. My name's Mike Bernard. I'm the host of the Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. You know, a couple of years ago, we didn't have to worry about this, but that while that made your tax return easier, it wasn't a good thing, right? When your savings account or your money market account was paying point nothing, you really didn't have to worry about the impact that it made on your tax return. Now that, and yes, rates are on their way down and averaging under 4% right now, but last year, 2024, for most of the year, money market rates were averaging around 5% or even a little bit higher. And from what we're seeing as we're serving folks and doing tax planning and tax preparation, that's created a little bit of havoc and surprise if you weren't planning for it on of the tax impact. I mean, think about it. If you've got $25,000 or so in an emergency fund in a high yield money market, and then maybe you're saving up for a new car, so there's another 10 grand or so there, and then you're saving up for your known upcoming expenses. We call that delayed spending. And I don't know, say you've got somewhere close to all in, 40 to 50 grand in the bank. Now you're talking a few $1,000s of interest that you earned sort of discreetly without really even knowing it or maybe paying much attention to it. And all of a sudden that lands on your tax return. And if you're in the 22% tax bracket or so, that can move you from getting a small refund to owing maybe $1,000 or so. Just had a meeting earlier this week with some folks that I serve where their interest was up over $40,000 for 2024 compared to 2023. And 2023 was up about 10 grand compared to 2022. And you might say, oh, interest of $40,000, they must have it. No. Their interest increased by $40,000 over the past year. And if to anyone, that would have caught them by surprise. Now, we were aware of that. We had a plan that didn't create any surprise at all. But yeah, that's an additional 10 grand of federal taxes as well, as well as state. And so if that's you and you have a tax impact from the interest that your bank account has earned this year, are there ways that you can offset that or maybe avoid the tax on it? Unfortunately, you can't avoid the tax on the interest because the interest in the bank account, as long as it's not in a tax shelter itself, the interest is going to be taxable. But there are some things that you can do to offset that tax. I've got a few ideas for you. And the great thing about these ideas is if you're eligible for them, you can actually contribute to them. You can actually use these ideas, implement them all the way up until April 15. You can even pinky swear, promise right now, and file your return as if you're going to do this and then get a refund and use your refund to do these things. So what are they? First, and my favorite and my go-to would be to contribute to your HSA an amount that's equal to the taxable income that you just received. So you've got to be eligible. You've got to have an HSA eligible high deductible health plan in the year 2024 or in last tax year. And if so, then you're allowed to contribute to a health savings account and you get a deduction for that. The maximum, you got to stay below the maximum and you've got to be aware that maximum contribution limit includes your contribution but also your employer contributions if they throw a little bit in there as well. But assuming that you're not maxing out those contributions, and let's just assume you had $4,000 or $3,000 of interest in the bank account from their bank accounts this year. Use that $3,000 or find $3,000 to contribute to your HSA. In doing so, you will completely offset the taxation of that interest income both at the federal level as well as at the state level. The HSA deduction is what's called an above-the-line deduction, reduces your adjusted gross income, which means it reduces your taxable income for federal, but also reduces your taxable income for state. For most states, there's, California, it has an add back for HSA deduction, but for most states, it's a deduction on both. And what I love about this is it keeps that interest income, that money, keeps it in your pocket. It's just a different pocket. You move it from your money market or your emergency fund over to your HSA, you still use those dollars for upcoming expenses. It would just be for upcoming medical expenses. But in that way, you neutralize, you completely offset the taxation that interest caused. Second idea goes hand in hand with the HSA, and that is you could always contribute to a traditional or pre-tax IRA. Now, it's very possible you might not be eligible for this. In HSA, you needed to have a qualifying high deductible health plan. In order to be eligible to deduct an IRA contribution, you need to have earned income, okay? But then you can't have too much earned income while also being a participant in an employer-provided retirement plan, so 401k, 403b, something like that. But if maybe you don't have a 401k that you're using at work, or maybe you do, but your income is below the threshold and you can still contribute to a traditional IRA, that again would be a way to completely erase or offset the interest income from being taxable. Just like with the HSA, when you contribute to a traditional IRA, that's an above the line deduction. That's old terminology there, but means it's a deduction before you get to your adjusted gross income, so it saves you both federal taxes and state taxes. And once again, this money stays in your pocket. You just kind of send it on the conveyor belt downstream and say, I'll use this out there in the future. And it completely can offset and neutralize the taxes from that interest. And the final idea, and this one is state specific, but you could contribute that interest earned amount to a 529 plan, a college savings account, although it's used for more than just college, if you have kids or if you have grandkids. Now, this could be a fantastic idea if your state offers a state tax benefit for making these contributions. And you might say, well, wait a second, the interest that I earned on my money market or in my savings account, that's going to be taxable both federal and state. I know, but hear me out here. In Indiana, where I live, there is a state tax credit on your contribution to the 529 plan, to the state's 529 plan, all the way up on the first $7,500 that you contribute. It's a 20% state tax credit. I know not all states have a tax benefit that's lucrative, or that is that lucrative, but think about this. If, again, you had $3,000 of taxable interest that is impacting your return, you take $3,000 and contribute that. If you pay Indiana state taxes, you contribute that to the Indiana 529 plan. Now you get a 20% state tax credit on that $3,000. It almost neutralizes, completely offsets that entire taxation that interest caused both on federal and state just by giving that state tax credit. And once again, keeps this money in your pocket, just sort of assigns the use case to college, qualifying educational expenses, college, that sort of thing for a child or a grandchild. So those are just a few of the ideas. If your taxes are being impacted for the first time in a long time, again, this is good news, but it creates a planning issue and could create a tax surprise. If your taxes are being impacted by the amount of interest that you received in your money market or in your savings account last year, there's a couple ideas that you can do all the way up until your tax filing deadline to help offset those taxes. So work with your CFP on that, see which of those makes sense, or maybe if there's another one that makes most sense for your unique financial situation. If you don't have a CFP on your team, you can contact one on my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with K, wisemoneyshow.com. You can find us there as well, or send us an email, info@korhorn.com. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.